So we can go into the voices abstraction in here, and currently, obviously, we have one piece of information that's being sent to the receive grain length object and being passed into the relevant objects that deal with that information down here. So we still need to send information from this randomizing engine, but we need to send two bits of information: the random range amount, which is obviously coming out of here, and the offset, which is coming out of here. And we need to pack those into a single message, and again send that to our grain length receiver here. So I will do that. So put in 0, 0. Remember that 0, 0 is a shorthand for pack 0, 0. I could put in more zeros, and that would represent a pack object with 6 inputs, obviously making one list output. But I only need to put 2 zeros in. That will give me my pack object. And then I just need to connect those up to here. Just make it reasonably neat. As I say, that can then be sent to grain length. And in fact, this section here can now be placed into my into the main part of the patch. Oops. Do that to replace this object here. So I shall just well, I'll just get rid of that. So we'll just pull it out so that it's roughly the same length as the original, and obviously I'd neaten this up so that it was a bit tidier. There we go. But again, this remains our grain length controller. Just put that there. And then this section needs to be placed into the voice abstraction somewhere around here. Object, so we'll just copy that into here again. Oops. Oh, sorry. Need to. There we go. So on this end, we need to use an unpack object to unpack that list of data. We can't use a shorthand for this, it has to be the full unpack name for the object. And then again, that's the range size goes into there, the range offset goes into there. And then of course it needs to be triggered. Well, we'll use the triggering of the grain itself to trigger that random number, which then sends out our random number based on the range that we've specified. And we'll simply use this or insert this in between the grain length, the receive grain length object and these other objects. We could possibly do it slightly more efficiently, but this will work, and in fact will allow us more options later on. So I'll send the grain length list to there, or randomization list to there, and then we will simply send the outputs of here to where the grain length content was going. So we'll send it to here, and we'll send it to there. And then we can get rid of these two lines here, and this is all going to look slightly messy. Let's move everything down a little bit. Whoops. Move that up, and move that to there. And then I might do a little label in a minute to say exactly what that's doing. So we still need to trigger that random number before we trigger the grain itself, which is being done by this bit here. And just to make sure everything happens in the right order, I'm going to use a trigger object, trigger bang bang. So this bang that comes in here will trigger the two events in the right order. So this one, first of all, will trigger the calculation of a random number, and then we will trigger the grain. So I might kind of tidy all of this up in a bit. There we go. So let's put a little panel around that. And put that behind. So I've just made a new panel. Notice it's on top of everything at the moment, so if I press Apple, Shift and B, it sends it to the back. So everything kind of underneath that panel we know now is calculating our grain length. Oops. So this is, I mean, you can see that, you know, when you get more complicated in terms of your patching, things start to look a little ugly, and it is worthwhile making sure that you have labelled everything appropriately. An alternative, of course, would be to put this into a patcher object, which we might do later on anyway. Okay, so that should work. So I'll save that. I'll close that, and we'll see whether that's worked. Turn this on. Whoops. So that seems to have worked. We've got short, you know, a range of short and longer grains happening there. We expand the length of the grain. Of course, if we wanted them all to be the same length, we just place a single point in the range slider, and it will continue to play at the same length. So you're not restricted by doing this method. You're not going to prevent yourself from being able to use a fixed length of grain, but you can also, obviously, it gives you more flexibility in terms of the length that you use. So that allows you to apply a range to a particular parameter, and you can apply a similar kind of range model to other aspects, which I'll come to in the next part of the tutorial.